Welcome back to The Five. Well, a big day at the White House this afternoon as 43 and 44 reunited. President Obama hosted his predecessor and family earlier today for the unveiling of President Bush and Mrs. Bush's official portraits. Now, at these types of events, the presidents are always gracious to one another. Take a look.
We may have our differences politically, but the presidency transcends those differences. We all love this country. We all want America to succeed.
I am pleased that my portrait brings an interesting symmetry to the White House collection. It now starts and ends with a George W. I am also pleased, Mr. President, that when you are wandering these halls as you wrestle with tough decisions, you will now be able to gaze at this portrait and ask, what would George do?
Oh, that sharp sense of humor, we miss it. Our own Dana Perino is in the room for the festivities, and she joins us live now from Washington, D.C. Hey, DP.
Thanks, Andrea. I'm glad I could get in on the conversation. You guys, it was very interesting. The show's good. I'm watching it from here.
Well, we miss you, but tell us, what were some of the highlights of the portrait unveiling today?
Well, I have to say I did have a feeling of a little bit of nervousness, right? Because I hadn't been back in 3.5 years. There's a lot of memories there for me and for a lot of people that were there today. It wasn't all staff, all sorts of people that worked for President Bush, watched today. But for those of us who got to be in the room, it was very special. But as I walked up the stairs to the event with Karl Rove, by the way, one of the things I realized was that this house isn't anybody's. When you're occupying it, this house really belongs to everybody in America. And the portrait unveiling was a wonderful moment. When 41 came in, he got the loudest sustained applause. When 43 talked about his dad and he choked up in that moment, that's a moment of history that in our lifetimes we will never see again.
Hey, Dana, did the president like the portrait? I mean, honestly, sometimes you get pictures done. I've done never a portrait, but a sketch. Did he really like it?
Well, he didn't tell me he didn't. I think it was good, and I love that he talked about the portrait. The painting in the back of him in that portrait is from the hymn, A Charge to Keep. I thought Mrs. Bush, she looks great in the portrait, but she looks amazing today. Absolutely beautiful woman, stunning.
She is beautiful.
Dana, and I thought her speech was probably the best out of the four.
Dana,
if I could say that.
I just mentioned that to Bob. I said she looked fantastic. She is the epitome of graciousness, Mrs. Bush. She was fantastic. Tell us, was she okay with her picture? Did she like it?
I think so. I mean, look, I hope so. It looks stunning, and she was. I could tell that she was very sincere in her thanks and gratitude to the artist that that I think they're taking a picture with here in a second. And the unveiling was a special moment, and also it's nice, kind of a bookend to a presidency when you get your portrait up there. I like the story when 43 said that the first George W., when the White House was being burnt by the British, Dolly Madison grabbed it and ran out of the White House, and President Bush said, "So, Michelle, I'm your man for if it ever happens again." It was a good moment, very funny, cut the tension.
It's cute. Yeah, this is beautiful. I think it's so special, and I'm glad that they were there, you know, together. Dana, you're able to witness this and be a part of it, an historic occasion. And the Bush family, always so gracious. We can learn so much, you know, from them, from their civility and the way they conducted themselves always at every occasion. And always so, you know, humble. It seems like it was a proud, a happy day for the family, especially for father and son to be there.
You know, the thing that struck me, I mean, is the contrast between the civility in that room and the incivility, whatever the word is, in the rest of Washington is really striking, I thought, Dana. Hey, by the way, did anybody mention the Five when you were down there?
As a matter of fact, Bob, you came up quite a bit at the White House today.
Dana, we hear there were a lot of fans down there.
Lots of fans. Everybody from Tom Ridge, former Secretary Tom Ridge, who said it was one of his favorite shows. Carlos Gutierrez, his wife was there. She said she watches it every day, no matter what. But also I got to see a lot of the butler staff and wait staff that I had gotten to know over the years. They all watch it every day. But I had one guy, and I'll tell you who it is when I see you, Bob, in person, came up to me and said, "You know, I've got a bone to pick with you." And I said, "Oh, okay." And this is the guy that we worked with, and he said, "You are way too soft on Bob Beckel."
Hey, Dana, I want to play a thought for you. Bob mentioned the graciousness, but it hasn't always been that gracious or that the camaraderie between the two of them. Take a listen.
When I came into office, there had been drift in the Afghan strategy, in part because we had spent a lot of time focusing on Iraq instead.
They run up these wild debts.
And then when we take over, we got to clean it up. They want to give banks and insurance companies even more power to do as they please and gut and strip out regulations that help protect consumers. But that's not new. That was tried, remember? The last guy did all this.
Can I just say one thing here for a second? On a day when we have a nice civility, as we've said in the White House, it's not up to me to do these things, but to run those cuts of Obama it's too bad.
But he has brought up President Bush.
Yeah, but I'm wondering, you got a nice day like today, you ought to keep.
And President Bush has been silent. Go ahead.
Yeah, it was an unbelievable ceremony. But Dana, I thought this is what I took from this. After 3.5 years in office and more gray hair, I have a deeper understanding of the challenges faced by the men before me, including President Bush. Do you think we've moved past some of the other guy and those statements?
No, I don't. I think that politics was set aside today. But even earlier this week, I think it is an interesting contrast, actually, Bob, that how do politicians at that level reconcile some of the things they say during the day with later? And that is politics. It's the way it is. I was proud on Saturday when I read the New York Times piece where Peter Baker wrote about this upcoming event that we had today. And he said that through it all, President Bush has always said, the man deserves my silence. And he's never said anything publicly, and he won't be. And he said that he wasn't going to, doesn't seek the limelight. I do believe that comparisons are going to be made to the previous person, and it's hard to set politics aside, especially when President Obama is facing what will be a very tough re-election effort.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you, Dana, so much. We got to go, but we'll see you back here tomorrow. Have a safe trip back. All right.
Bye-bye.
Coming up, this next story is so absurd that even Bob is beside himself. Pretty soon, here in New York City, we might not be able to buy supersized soda drinks if Big Brother and Mayor Michael Bloomberg gets his way. We'll tell you about his latest scheme when we come back.